Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar introducing Profound.js 2.0, extend the power of Node to your IBMI applications. Today we're joined by Alex Roytman, CEO of Profound Logic, and David Russo, Director of Research and Development at Profound Logic. We're excited to have them with us on this presentation. Before we get started, just a few notes. I wanted to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email with the recording once it's available. We will also have a Q&A session after this presentation, so stay tuned for that. And then after the webinar, you will be prompted to take a post-webinar survey. If you can take that for us, that would be great. It gives us more information about how to make our webinars better in the future. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Alex.
All right, welcome everyone. First of all, I just want to extend an apology for those of you that attended the live version of the webinar for the sound quality issues that we've had. So what I did here is I just went ahead and I re-recorded this portion of the webinar, so hopefully the sound quality will be okay here. Okay, so let's talk about Profound.js 2.0 and extending the power of Node.js to your IBMI applications. So we launched Profound.js last year, and we've been working with a number of customers to kind of perfect it and to make it better. And now we've launched Profound.js 2.0, and what's neat about this version is that, first of all, you can actually download it and install it all in an automated installation. And this comes along with free pieces of software. So there's some free tools that you get and a free framework that you get. And there's also commercial pieces that come along with it for some of the more advanced functionality. So when we talk about Node.js and Node.js functionality, it's important to understand that really what we're talking about is JavaScript. But here we're talking about using JavaScript in a slightly different way. So we're really talking about server-side JavaScript rather than the traditional client-side JavaScript. And I'm sure a lot of you have already used JavaScript. If you're doing any kind of web development, or if you're doing Profound UI development, undoubtedly you've already been exposed to JavaScript. But it's important to understand this difference between client-side JavaScript and what you've traditionally done in server-side JavaScript. So with client-side JavaScript, this is something that only runs in the browser or the mobile device, and typically what you're doing with it is you're controlling the user interface. So you may be controlling, what a widget looks like, or how a widget behaves, or something like that. Or it's also very common to do something like validating user input. On the server side, the language is the same, but it's used in a different manner. It runs on a central server and serves up many users. And really here you're concerned more with the business logic rather than the user interface. So you're concerned with the business logic. That could mean that you're writing the business logic from scratch. Now that could also mean that you're calling some existing business logic units. That could mean that you're calling an RPG program, for example, for the business logic. Also key to development with Node.js and server-side JavaScript is database access. So you're going to be accessing the database through JavaScript, which is not something that you've ever done before with client-side JavaScript. Okay, so why would you want to use JavaScript as a server-side language to begin with? Well, first of all, it's important to note that it's a fully fledged high-level language. So even though script is in the name, it's not just used for small scripts. It's a language that can be used to write entire applications, including very much robust business application. And it really has all of the capabilities, and in many cases even more capabilities than some of the other traditional languages. But at the same time, it's a very simple language to get started with and to learn. So when I first got into JavaScript, I was amazed at how easy it was for me to pick it up. So it was very simple, and it seemed very flexible on how it works, how it deals with data, with objects, with arrays, and how it can use JavaScript object notation to describe the information that you're working with. And it's also interpreted, so it's not a compiled language, so therefore your executable object and your source code, it's one and the same, and that also makes things very simple. It is also a portable language, so it can run on any system, on any platform, and that of course includes IBMI. And what I love about it is being able to just try things out very quickly on my laptop, and that same logic then just transfers over to the server just as easily. The language is also very powerful, so I've watched over the years how more and more powerful this language has gotten, how it grew in its capabilities. And I think this is largely due to how the web and mobile has taken off, and therefore what really happened there is that the browser vendors, they really had to step it up and make sure that JavaScript performs really well and is capable for some serious application development. And finally, and I think this is perhaps the most important point, JavaScript is really everywhere. And so that means that it's easy to find resources, whether that be online examples or finding conferences to go to or peers to work with or finding developers to hire. There are millions of developers working with JavaScript today. Or finding code libraries and packages that you can reuse in your applications instead of just reinventing the wheel and always writing business logic from scratch. And when it comes to these code packages, there's a tool that you need to be aware of, and that's called NPM, or Node Package Manager. Now, NPM is something that already comes with Node, so you don't really need to get it separately. But what it does give you is access to tons of free and open source software packages for virtually any type of application development needs. So one of the first things that you'll want to learn when it comes to learning about Node is basically how to use NPM and how to use the packages within NPM, because that really does open up a lot of doors. Now you can explore what's available on NPM just by going to npmjs.com. So I actually took a screenshot of the site just to show you how, some of the things that they list on there. So they list some real-time statistics, and to me they're very impressive. So first of all, note that there's more than 500,000 free packages available. So that's like having access to 500,000 free pieces of software that you can pretty much deploy as needed within your applications. And then NPM also has 10 billion downloads every month. So to me that's very impressive. I would have been impressed with 10 million, but here we're talking 10 billion. So you can see how big and how popular this ecosystem of Node.js open source packages has gotten. Now, a lot of people are cautious about deploying open source software because you're not sure how stable it is and what kind of support you're going to get. Well, you're going to be pleased to find out that a lot of the software on NPM is very much maintained and supported by collaborators that include both individual developers and companies, and some of them big companies like IBM and Google. So it's not always the lone developer in the basement that's developing this open source piece of software. And so for each one of these packages, you can actually look it up and you can see who the contributors are and how much that particular piece of software is being used. And this is a key statistic. So if a package is being downloaded millions of times per month, well then you know instantly that it's going to be more popular and more supported and more stable than a package that is downloaded just a few times per month. And to me, if something is being used that much, it's probably even more stable than a commercial piece of software. And using NPM is actually very simple as well. So the first thing is to install a package. You simply, from the command line, take the command of npm install and you give the package name, and that installs it into your project. So you can install any one of the packages, it downloads it automatically, puts it on your system, and it's available immediately for you to use. Now to use a package in your code, you simply use a command called require. That brings the functionality of the package, and then you have access to all the API and all the commands that the package gives you. So what are some of the capabilities that you can get out of these packages? Well, I've taken, I put in some images on the slide here just to show you some of those capabilities. This is a snapshot of everything that's available. Again, there's 500,000 packages, but some of the more popular things, if you wanted to get out into the cloud, if you wanted to do web or mobile development, or Internet of Things, or security and encryption, that type of stuff, or image processing of any sort, or connecting to other databases. So this is very popular because a lot of you probably have other databases, just other than just IBMI. So if you wanted to connect to MySQL or SQL Server or Oracle, this is very easy now with these NPM packages and drivers that come along that allow you this type of access. IBM Watson, so one of the things that you'll notice about Watson and the capabilities that Watson provides is that the API, they do provide API in different languages, but some of the main API or like the main language that's being used is actually Node.js. So most of the main examples are in Node.js, and it's easy, very easy to access Watson from Node. The same goes with web services. The same goes with document, whether that's processing documents or outputting documents. So if you wanted to output PDF or Excel, Word documents, this becomes very easy with Node.js. Now, Node.js is now on IBMI as well, and there are 3 points that I want to make about this. So first of all is that it's been ported to IBMI, and so you really don't need anything special. This was already done a couple years ago, so for a couple years you've had this available, and it's just a matter of installing the right PTFs, and you have all of the capabilities of Node. The second point is that it's been enhanced over time, and so it's not something that was just kind of ported over and forgotten about. This is something that's being enhanced, and so as new capabilities come to Node or new versions of Node are out, IBM is porting things over, and IBM, and this is the third point, has come out and actually stated that this is very strategic to them. This is one of the more strategic things for IBM in terms of IBMI. So if you attend some of the conferences like Common, you see IBM stating this. I went to the at Common, I went to the roundtable, the open source roundtable, and IBM came out, folks like Steve Will, the chief architect of IBMI, came out and said that this is one of the more strategic things that IBM is working on, is bringing open source, and of course that includes Node.js, over to IBMI. Now you should be aware that there are two different environments that you have on your system. You have the ILE environment, the integrated language environment, and this is where your typical RPG, COBOL, and CL applications run, so your traditional applications run there. And then you also have the PASE environment, or the Portable Application Solutions environment. And this is where some of the open source software runs. This is where Node.js runs, this is where PHP runs. Now the reason that I bring this up is that because it's always been a challenge for these two environments to communicate to each other. So there are ways that they can communicate, but ultimately things run in a different call stack, and things like sharing job resources, maybe it's QTemp data or anything like that, or overrides, has been very difficult. And this is where Profound.js comes in. And so if I had to talk about and list some of the main features of Profound.js, I would say that it's this. It's the fact that Profound.js makes Node.js act like an ILE language. So when you're coding Node.js, it's now no longer any different than coding, let's say, an RPG program or a CL program. So this capability is very, very, very important. Profound.js also provides the capabilities of RPG to Node. So RPG is a very good language for transactional business applications. It's very good at accessing data. Some of the things that I love about RPG is the fact that you can go out and chain to a record, grab all of its data, and immediately within the next line of code you can write that data out to a screen. So it's very simple to do these transactional top-down types of applications. So we've brought all of those capabilities to Node, and that of course includes a very powerful database driver. So we both provide RLA, or record level access, and SQL access, and of course with RLA you now have things like a chain or read prior or whatnot. Some of the same capabilities that we love about RPG we've now brought over to Node. Profound.js also allows you to very easily call RPG programs from Node, or to call Node programs from RPG. Again, Node in this case is acting just like any standard programming language on the ILE side. So with that, let's take a look at some of the concepts within Profound.js. And I'm going to start out and describe this concept that we have about strongly typed fields. Now, by default, JavaScript really just has what's called a loosely typed field. So when you declare a variable, that variable doesn't have a type until you assign data into it. And that can be very powerful in certain scenarios. But in business applications, very often we want to assign a specific data type to a variable, so that if you try to put in character data into a numeric value, that really should raise an exception. And so this is one of the things that Profound.js brings, and it provides all of the IBMI data types. So for example, on the screen here, you can see that we're declaring a number, and that number is declared with a packed data type, which is one of the IBMI data types. So that's one of the main concepts. And then this concept carries over into how you can call programs. So now that makes it very easy to call a program and pass in parameters, because the parameters are defined in the way that an existing ILE program expects. So you can declare variables, and with a simple one-liner, you can call any program and you can pass parameters to it, and that program can use the parameters and even update the parameters, so the parameters can actually be passed by reference. The next concept is calling commands. So very easy to call commands, but what I want to bring your attention to is the fact that even if it's an interactive command, you can still call it directly from Node. And here you're going to be using Genie. Genie is our 5250 emulator that runs in the browser. So if you call this command using Node.js, and you call something like work active jobs or work submitted jobs or work spool file, that command renders as HTML5 and displays the information that you're looking for. All right, how about building user interfaces? And this is where Profound.js is really flexible and also really powerful. So we have two ways that you can design user interfaces. You can design them as just standard HTML content, or you can design them as rich displays. And rich displays is really powerful, and this is probably something that most of you are going to prefer. Basically, the idea is that you use a visual designer tool to create the interface. It's a drag and drop tool. It's free. We provide it with Profound.js. And that builds for you a JSON definition file, and then you simply refer to that definition file within your Node.js code. You use the define display API, which is very similar to a file specification, kind of like declaring a workstation file. And once you've defined it, you get access to an object that has properties and methods, and then you can interact with that screen. And you have a lot more capabilities there within the widgets and all the dynamic HTML capabilities compared to just building HTML content from scratch. Now let's talk about database access. So with Profound.js, we provide both record-level database access and SQL access to your data. And when it comes to record-level database access, you simply define a table and you provide properties for that definition. So whether you want to be able to read the data, whether you're able to update the data or write to the database file, whether it's a keyed file, and so forth. And then once you've defined that database table, that is then accessible as an object. And again, you have methods that you can use. For example, you can use something like the getRecord method to fetch a record by key. So this is very similar to a chain, but of course you can also do reads, read priors, writes, and so forth. Our SQL capabilities are very robust as well. So you can execute SQL statements directly, or you can prepare them in advance and then bind parameters and fetch the data as needed. So we've covered a lot of the Profound.js framework concept and a lot of the Profound.js API, but Profound.js also comes with a number of tools. So first of all, we have the visual designer. This is something that we already mentioned, but basically a great way to create user interfaces, either for web applications, browser applications, or for mobile applications. The visual designer comes with a full front-end framework that gives you over 100 different widgets, and developing with it is very simple. It's primarily configuring rather than coding, so you're dragging and dropping, pointing and clicking, and configuring the widgets on the canvas. So this really speeds up development when it comes to just HTML content or dynamic HTML content. Another tool that we provide is Jumpstart, and Jumpstart is something that we've had for a while. It's a tool to automatically generate code. You start out with your database and it will automatically create either a CRUD application or an inquiry application. Now this time around, we've actually added a lot of new features to Jumpstart, and one of the big features is that it can now automatically generate Node.js code. And now the converter is another tool that's been very popular. We've had a lot of interest. At this point in time, the converter is still not something that you download and use on your own. This is something that we work with customers with. But it's something that can automatically convert existing RPG programs into Node.js code. And this has been very popular because not only can it take clean RPG code or good code that's written well, but we can take big monolithic programs and simplify it as part of the conversion, and in certain cases modularize portions of it as well. And this brings me to the topic of agile modernization. You'll hear us use the word agile a lot when we talk about Profound.js. And to understand what we're talking about, consider how the typical application is typically built. So a typical application will have thousands of programs, and those programs are very interconnected. So you have one program calling another, and that program calls yet another program, and there's all these connections and all these dependencies that you have. So if you were to modernize one piece, that would have an effect on the other pieces that are connected to it. So modernizing one piece in a traditional way just doesn't work. You have to modernize everything else that comes with it. Modernizing one thing might mean you have to modernize 100 other things that go along with it. Well, that's not the case with Profound.js because of how well it works. with ILE, how it connects Node.js to ILE. So you can actually do one little piece at a time. So that gives you an iterative approach to modernization. Of course, ultimately what that does is it avoids risk. You don't have to do a big bang approach to modernizing your applications. You can take one little program and convert it to Node, or build some new Node capabilities, and you can immediately deploy that to your users. You don't have to go and do everything. So with that, let me summarize what's new in version 2 of Profound.js. So first of all, we ship a free Node.js development framework for IBMI. It's shipped on NPM or Node Package Manager, and you can install it using just a standard npm install command. This gives you lots of capabilities that are specifically designed for creating business applications. So it supports all the IBMI data types, and it basically allows you to code JavaScript in a top-down transactional manner, which is it's more suitable for business applications. So rather than being forced to use event-driven programming with callbacks for your business logic, our framework and our API, they work in a way that a business application developer or an RPG developer is used to. Now this also comes with a free visual designer tool, which really solves the user interface problem and basically makes working with web and mobile interfaces very simple. Now the good news is that these tools are absolutely free, so you can keep them forever, so there's really no reason for you not to give it a try. Now we also provide some commercial modules. There's the connector, which allows for seamless integration between your existing IBMI applications and your data and Node.js. and that's available as a free trial, and we also provide some very reasonable pricing for you to get started with when it comes to the connector. So I really encourage you to give that and all of those features a try as well. There's also Jumpstart. This is our application generator, and that lets you really get going immediately. This automatically generates both front-end and back-end JavaScript code. Again, it's also available for you to try for free. And then there is the RPG to Node conversion. So this is something that we've had available prior to 2.0, but we've made many enhancements to it. It's becoming more comprehensive. So with this, we work directly with customers to convert their applications, and here we can convert both the back end and the front end. And that is, front end if you still have green screen interfaces, that is. So the best way to get started with this is to work with us on a POC project. So if this is something that you're interested in, we'd love to talk to you. Okay, so with that, let me hand things over to David, who is going to do a quick demo on using Node.js, NPM, and Profound.js.
I wanted to say thanks everyone for joining us today. And the first thing that I'm going to show you is a very simple Node program that will give you an idea of the basic functionality provided with Node.js itself. What we're looking at on the screen is a very simple program that is designed to write a file to the file system. The program makes use of one of Node.js's built-in APIs to do that. And this program is interesting because in Node.js, I/O is typically done asynchronously, meaning that when I write this file, the program is not going to wait for the file write to complete. Rather, the API will return right away, and a callback function will be run when the I/O is complete. So the console.log statements that you see here and here and here show the progress of the program. Now, you might expect that this message here on line 23 will be the last thing to display because it's the last line of code, but that's not the case. Because write file returns immediately, you will see this console.log being the last output on the screen. So I can demonstrate that by running it in a terminal session. As Alex mentioned, Node runs and pays, so I'm connected to my IBMI system using a Unix terminal emulator program. The way to start a Node program is by running the command node. This launches the Node binary, which is a JavaScript interpreter, and I have to pass the name of my JavaScript source file to start. My file is called io.js. So if I run that, you'll see that the very last thing to occur is the callback from writing my file. I forgot to mention that the script also accepts a parameter. as input using this process.argv. This allows me to pass some content into the script to write to the file. So I should probably do that. So that text from the command line is written into the file. If I look around in my directory, I'll see that I now have a file called output.txt has been written to the current directory. So that's a good example of a basic Node program. And Node itself doesn't give us a whole lot beyond this asynchronous I/O concept and some basic APIs to do I/O to the file system and using the network. Other than that, we rely on third packages in NPM. As Alex mentioned, there's a great variety of things in there. One quick example I can show you is an email program. Let's say, for example, I wanted to now email a file that I've created using Node, and I don't know how to do that. I can go look on NPM, and I found a good package already that's called Node Mailer. As Alex mentioned, a lot of these are very heavily used. I can see that this one has been downloaded 32,000 times within the past day. So a lot of high quality software in here. To get access to it, I'm going to use NPM. That's the Node Package Manager. And all that I have to do to install the software from the internet is to run NPM and then the name of the package. I have to do NPM install Node Mailer, sorry. NPM install package name will install it, so it's downloading from the online repo and setting it up. So pretty easy. What I'm going to do with this package, I've prepared a simple program built around this that allows me to pass some parameters on the command line to send an email message. So I'll take a quick look at this program. This program, I've used the same method as the first one to receive parameters from the command line. And then there's a few lines of code to use Node Mailer to send the message. And then this message, email sent, will run from an asynchronous callback when the email message is sent successfully. So here I'm going to find the correct command to call this, which I have here. So I'm passing the mail server name, my account name, and password. And it sent the email. So if I go over to my Outlook, I have the email from Node.js. So Node by itself, very simple, but combined with NPM, we have a lot of capability. So let me now show you some things that we provide with Profound.js that make things even better. The first thing that I'm going to demonstrate for you is our Jumpstart application generator. So the Jumpstart is a browser-based tool. So I'm going to go over here to my web browser and open this tab. And this is the user interface for generating an application using Jumpstart. Jumpstart's capable of generating a few different kinds of applications. What I'm going to show you here is a subfile type application. I'm going to generate a listing of product records and additional screens to maintain the products. We have a couple of different options here for how the subfile is loaded. All of the records can be loaded at once, or we can have Jumpstart generate paging logic. And checking these boxes, view, edit, add, and delete, create the additional screens that I use to work with the records. Jumpstart can generate applications in either RPG, PHP, and now Node.js. So I'll select Node. We're going to produce a rich display file using our built-in Node template. And here I've entered the name of my database file catalog with my product records. located on the library list that I have here. One new feature of the Jumpstart interface is the capability to join files together. I don't need to do that for my application, but if I did, I could click here and one moment. So a join interface comes up that I can use to join the files by dragging and dropping columns to join by. So if I wanted to join on this, I could drag and drop this over here. So that's pretty handy and allows us to create applications that make use of multiple files. The next thing that I need to do is select the fields for display on the application. So on the main grid, I'm going to select the fields product ID, category, description, quantity, minimum price, US price. Looks good. For the search, we're going to make it searchable on the product ID, category, and description. And we'll make all of the fields available on the details screen. Down below, I get a preview of the SQL statement that's going to be used to load the records. And then all I have to do is tell it where I want to put the output. So I'm going to create the Node.js program in a directory that you see here. I'm going to also create what we call a proxy program that allows me to call the Node.js application from Profound UI Genie. The way that this works is that a native ILE program called cat-maint in this case will be created in my library dr demo. I can then call that program from a Genie session, and the Node.js application of the same name in the same directory structure on the IFS will be run. So this allows me to integrate a newly developed Node.js application, such as one generated with Jumpstart, with older applications running in Genie. So I'll go ahead and generate that. So I'll show you the output that it's produced. If I go to the Visual Designer, a special version of Profound UI's Visual Designer is provided with Profound.js, as Alex mentioned. And that's what I'm looking at here. For those of you who have used our Rich Display File Designer before, it's very similar, but it has some unique features for Node.js. So what we're looking at is the screen that has been produced by Jumpstart. This is the listing of records. Search. This is the panel that can be used to edit the record details, and a couple of other screens for other purposes. The code that it produces is in a JavaScript, and it looks like this. One of the nice things about the code that it generates, as Alex mentioned, Profound.js includes APIs that allow you to run your business logic in a top-down manner without having to worry about those asynchronous callbacks that I showed you. In my example, the use of the callbacks was pretty simple, but if you write a lot of code with a lot of different functions that are using callbacks, the coding gets a bit messy and hard to deal with. But if you look at this code here that's fetching records from the database, for example, we have an API that's called pjs.fetch, which is equivalent to a fetch in embedded SQL and RPG. And so you can see here there's a simple loop to process the records, and the coding is done in a very top-down way. So this is designed to be easy to use for a business application developer. So to run the application, I'm going to go to a Genie session that I have open here in a browser tab. And this is what the output looks like. So I have a listing of records that I can scroll through. I can search the list. I can view the record details. And I can edit the record contents. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what Profound.js has to offer in version 2.0. I'm going to turn it back over to Alex and Amanda at this point for a wrap-up and Q&A. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, David. And again, I apologize to everyone for the sound quality issues that we've had. I think what we're going to try to do is maybe go back and re-record some of this content so that when we send out the follow-up email with the recording, you'll have better quality information. You can rewatch the content that you missed. But just to conclude, the benefits of Node development with Profound.js is that we've allowing you to bring all of the power and benefits of Node to your IBMI and to your IBMI applications. And that happens by making it easy to integrate between your existing RPG applications and Node.js. And we offer an agile approach to modernizing existing applications and making it easy to technologies like Watson and IoT, and the big point here is that on NPM there's access to a lot of different technologies that it's now easy to access. So as far as next steps, if you wanted to see how to get started with Profound.js, we've prepared a quick 6-minute video that you can go and watch. The link is provided here, and you'll see this in our follow-up email as well. Basically, the way that you get started is with a quick npm install. It takes just a few minutes, and you can do this even on your desktop. So you can start playing around with it on your desktop even before you install anything on your IBMI. Again, we're going to try to improve the audio content and email you a link to an on-demand version of the webinar. So if there are things that you've missed, or if you want to rewatch the content, watch out for that email. And also, you will be prompted to complete a post-webinar survey where you can provide us some feedback. So with that, we're going to look and see if there are any questions that we've received that we'd like to answer. So one of the questions that I see here is, and I'm not reading it verbatim, but basically there's a concern about pulling open source code onto IBMI, given that IBMI is a very secure system. Well, one of the things that I'll say is that everything is still running on IBMI, and all of the security features are taking advantage of. So when David created that one application, and even though it's Node.js source code that's being created, there's still an object behind it. There's still a program object behind it, and this is the capability that we have that makes Node run like an ILE program, and you have object level authority, and all of the security features that IBMI has are still there. So that would be one thing to consider. But also the code that you're pulling, you're able to, prior to pulling any of that code, you're really able to go into npmjs.com, and you're able to see a lot of, like we mentioned before, statistics that are out there. So you can see whether a certain package is popular, who the contributors are, who the developers are, and something that's being downloaded millions of times every single month, then you know that it's used a lot out there, and that gives you a sense of reliability for that type of package that you're downloading.
I see one here. The question is, can we run the Profound.js on the PC with Node? I think that's what the asker is after. He says, can we run on localhost using Node? And yes, you can run Profound.js on your local PC. It installs from npm just by doing npm install Profound.js. And then you can run the service on your PC, and you can create new applications to run for testing, or you can run the applications integrated with IBMI using the connector by calling one of those proxy programs that I mentioned through Genie.
And
the Jumpstart user interface only runs on IBMI.
Sorry, David. I was just going to jump in.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I'm sorry. I was just going to jump in and let everybody know that in the follow-up email that I send out, we have step-by-step instructions on how to set this up on your PC, including a video. So just keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yes, and that answers some of the questions that we're seeing here, is how to get started, where do you get the free tryout version of Profound.js. So basically, number one, we have a video that explains this. We'll send you a link, but a very short answer to that, that's available on NPM. So if you have Node installed, let's say on your PC or on IBMI, the way to start installing it is you type in the command npm install Profound.js. Someone is asking here, what is the Genie environment? So Genie is our environment. It basically gives you a 5250 session, but it gives it to you in a browser. So why is that important? Because your Node.js application may have HTML output. And so when we're talking about this interoperability where Node can call RPG and RPG can call Node, so Node can call an RPG program, and even if that RPG program presents a green screen interface, that's still going to function within our environment, and Genie is what handles that, because that green screen on the fly is translated to HTML5, and that's through Genie. Basically, the 5250 protocol is translated on the fly to HTML5. So Genie is key to that integration, because if you have a lot of existing RPG code and you haven't taken the time to go out and separate the display file logic from the business logic, of course that's a great idea, and this is what we would recommend, but in the real world, realistically, we know that this may take years. So before you go out and do all that, you can start integrating your code already. So you can call, a Node.js program can call an RPG program, and even if that RPG program is still a green screen, everything will function. Let's see. So one of the questions here, and this is more of a technical question on how do you access what is the URL to access the visual designer for Node? And if you're familiar with the visual designer that we ship with Profound UI, the URL for that is, it's your host name and port number /Profound UI/designer. For Node, it is a different URL. It's your host name. So if you're installing it on your PC, that could be localhost. Then :port name, and then /Node designer. That takes you straight to the visual designer interface for Node. David, there's one question about command lines and what was the command line used in your demonstration. Is that something that you want to address, answer?
Sure, that's a good question. On the Jumpstart user interface, I told it to create a proxy program and library called drdemo with a program named catmain, and that produced a native object that I called from my Genie session using the standard call command. So for those of you who are not aware, Genie is our browser-based 5250 emulation. So I basically called a program at a 5250 command line. And that program communicates with Profound.js through what we call the Profound.js connector. So it's as simple as calling a program from the command line or your menu.
Yeah, so that concept of a proxy program is very important. So it's an actual object on IBMI that you can call like any program, and that connects you to your Node.js script. Another question is, are there any components that need to be installed on the iSeries side as well? And yes, there are, and I guess the first thing is you want to make sure that Node.js is installed on your system. On our documentation site, which is profoundlogic.com/docs, we provide a lot of detailed instructions, including how to install the prerequisites, meaning how to install the PTF to install Node.js on your system. So that has to be there first of all. But then, the next step is you just do the npm install Profound.js, and that process prompts you for all of the, it basically walks you through everything that you need to install on the iSeries side. Another question is relating to the converter, and the question here is, once a program is converted, do we need to keep the iLeap programs anymore? And the answer here is that no, those programs, that is a full translation. So all the business logic at that point have been translated, so there's not a need to keep the original programs. So going forward, you can maintain things in Node. So our process here, if you have, let's say, a green screen application and you're starting at that level, your DDS is translated to HTML5 or JSON, and this is what we call rich display files, and your RPG code is converted to Node.js, and you no longer need your original DDS and your original RPG code at that point in time. So another question here is, are the programs that are created by Jumpstart, are they debuggable? And this is one of the nice things about Node is there are many debug tools available, and it certainly is debuggable. The tool that we have that we tend to like and that we kind of recommend, even though there are different tools that you can try for Node.js development, you can really do any debugger. But the tool that we like is VS Code. So VS Code just seems like a very intuitive, easy to use debugger. It works very well with any Node.js code, including the code that Profound.js uses and or that Jumpstart generates or that our converter produces.
I see one here. Someone has asked, is Profound.js portable and can run on other platforms? So right now, Profound.js can run on either Windows or IBMI, and very soon it will be able to run on Linux as well.
Let's see. There's another question about URLs, and that is, would you be able to access Genie through localhost/ProfoundUI/Genie? So the answer to that is that's not exactly the way that you access Genie. You don't access it through your localhost. If by localhost you mean your PC desktop, you would actually have to provide the IBMI host name. So it would be the IBMI host name and port number /ProfoundUI/Genie. One more question before we wrap things up, and the question here is, what about CL programs? Is there a converter for that? So we do not have a converter for CL programs, but one thing that I'll note is that CL programs can be used with Node. So if you have a CL program that is just setting things up and then maybe calling an RPG. It can call your Node program or your Node program just in the same way. And if you have any overrides or if you're using things like qtemp, temporary files that are built within the CL program, all of that is going to be compatible with the new Node program that you call. Okay, well that wraps up our questions and answers. I'd like to thank everyone once again, and we'll please look for a follow-up email where we provide links to both the video that shows you how to get started and install the software, and a recording of the webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, David. Thanks for everybody for sticking with us, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.